Hi, welcome to True Creeps, where the stories are true and the creeps are real. We'll cover stories from grotesque gore to the possibly plausible paranormal, to horrifying history, to tense and terrible true crime, and everything else that goes bump in the night. We're your hosts, Amanda, and I'm Lindsay, and we want you to join us while we creep. We cover mature topics. Listener discretion is advised. Hey everybody! Welcome to our Villisca episode. We've only been talking about this forever. And by forever, I mean like a month.
Literally forever. No, from the beginning of True Creeps, we've been talking about Villisca.
Oh, I meant our trip. But yeah, since the beginning of True Creeps, we have been talking about Villisca.
It counts, okay?
It counts. It counts. So, if you want a full-length episode where you're going to hear about the crime, the investigation, the possible suspects, in depth, scroll all the way through our little episode catalog to episode 1 and just forgive us for being new, right? Like we were new then. I like to think that we're better now. Amanda is so much better. I have shown no growth.
You have. Oh my goodness. And we're great at editing compared to before.
Amanda was great then. She's great now. I am a mess. Well, again, we were also driving ourselves insane with editing then. We were like, no one can hear us breathe, which like,
we don't breathe.
You don't need to hear me breathe quite so much, but it's okay if every once in a while you hear a breath. Life will go on, you know? But as the very briefest recap of what we're talking about when we say Villisca, this is what we're talking about. So shortly after midnight on June 10th, 1912, a mystery assailant crept into the home of the Moore family in Villisca, Iowa, and they slaughtered the entire family with an axe. So in addition to the 6 members of the family, there were also 2 little girls who were friends of the children who had been spending the night, and they were also murdered. If you haven't listened to the episode yet, I am partial to it because it holds a special place in my heart, but it's a good one. And I think it actually is perhaps one of the only episodes where we'll say, go listen to that one first for sure, because it's going to give you so much more context for all of the things we're going to talk about today.
Mm-hmm.
So we went in mid-April, so we stayed between 4:19 to 4:20, so like that night to the next morning. And then, so we had a few beings that came with us. The first was Nora.
She may sound familiar. She made her first debut appearance in our Elms Hotel investigation episode.
Yes. We're going to play Nora's little blurb about herself right now.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nora. I've lived in Arizona for 10 years, currently in Springfield, Missouri, where I live with my husband and my 2 boys. I love reading, proud member of the Spicy Book Club. Bonus points if they are dark romance. And I love all things spooky, especially going and doing the ghost tours.
For the other 3 people that came, we asked them to just send us a little blurb. So I'm going to read you what they wrote. Also, my kitten Theo said hello just now. A shocking new addition to the True Creep sounds. Normally you just hear Moo snoring. Don't worry, she'll snore eventually, but he normally doesn't like chortle. But anyway, here we are. So the person who organized the trip is Lexi, and she's from Savannah, Georgia, where she's lived for almost 10 years. She loves photography, travel, and has combined that with her love of all things spooky on her Instagram page, which is October All Year.
A great account.
Yeah. We're going to share everybody's social media in our show notes today. And you'll see them in the weeks to come. We'll be sharing more of their content from the trip, so you can also see where they are. They're also good to check out if you want to look at any type of spooky content. So the next person that went with us was Enika, and she's a lover of all things Savannah, Georgia, and spooky. She is a soft retired journalist who now makes content for Instagram and TikTok about Savannah's weird and haunted history, as well as odd paranormal investigation. A treasure, a delight.
Love her account. Yeah.
Yes.
In her.
And then last but not least is Chrissy, and she is a proud taphophile from Boston, Massachusetts, with a love for all things spooky. You can find her photography on Instagram at SpookyFemme13. Again, we're going to share all these handles to you. Also, if you're like me and didn't know what a taphophile was, that's a person who likes to visit graveyards and cemeteries. And that's a lot of what her photos are. They are stunning.
They are.
So we mentioned in our last episode our girls' trip stowaway, which was Patty, the doll.
Yep.
That was given to us to care for and take from Malvern Manor to Villisca. So she was present in her glow up state.
Yes.
But let me tell you about Patty's sidekick and perhaps everyone's favorite attendee, the adorably sweet and friendly, chubby gray cat named Church.
I love him.
He is not agile, but loves to drink water out of a faucet, but only if it flows off the back of his head first. He's surprisingly adept at skirting bad vibes, but loves a friendly haunted doll, aka Patty. And he appreciates any and all treats and scratches.
Yes. We had read a book that said that there was a cat that visited Villisca often. So Lindsay and I were like, we have to make sure that we bring kitty cat treats for him.
Yeah, we bought our snacks and then snacks for him as well.
Yes, yes.
So we were like, we need him to know that we love him. Like, we don't even know him, but we love him.
I feel like he works there. Like, right when we pulled up, he immediately greeted us at our car. He's like, hello, welcome to Villisca.
Welcome. Welcome. Did you bring treats? That is proper etiquette.
Yes, yes.
We were like, we did. We did.
And then he watched us as we walked around and looked outside the house from a tree, which he promptly fell out of.
Oh my God. He fell out of so hard. And there's a beautiful video of him like scaling this tree. And then when the video stops, it's when he immediately falls. There's also, we tried to take like group photos and he photobombed them, but like in the front. So one of them has like half of his face and he completely blocked Chrissy out with his face. Disrespectful. But other than that, a treasure and a delight. And very bad at drinking water from a fountain or faucet.
I had to call Lindsay in because I'm like, look at this cat right now.
Oh, we'll share videos because of course we took videos. Look, there's a whole ass haunted house, but where are we? We're taking videos of the cat that can't drink from a faucet. Because it was also cold.
Oh yeah, I had to dry him off. Yeah. Poor kitty.
Yeah, he's a prince.
Oh my gosh, I want to send him so many things.
I know. When we send our care package to Patty, we also have to send Church some items.
Yes, yes. So, now that we've gone crazy about this cat that we're obsessed with.
Well, we've told you our cast today.
Yes, yes. I think we had special emphasis on this cat, though.
Of course we did.
Why wouldn't we? But yes, I'm obsessed with the cat. I came home and I was like, look at this cat. I'm obsessed with this cat. I love him. I want to send him a house.
He has a house.
Mike's like,
it's haunted.
He needs a little house outside that house.
Okay.
But when we went to Villisca, we used a lot of the same tools that we used in the Elms Hotel, but we had a few new additions. So I'm going to talk about what we used, just so when we reference them, you know what we're talking about. So the first thing we used were cat balls, and they are truly cat toys. But when they get moved, they light up. So you can see from far away if something moves them. We brought so many flashlights, and Lindsay brought a special flashlight. If you want to explain your flashlight real quick.
Yes, my special flashlight I brought was this very large flashlight that I think Ben got from a friend for Christmas a few years ago. And it has a little charging port, so it's a power bank. It also has a flashing red thing, so if you're like stuck on the side of the road, you could have it. It has a side lantern, and then it's also just a big ass flashlight, so it has the standard flashlight front brightness. Her name was Big Mama. She had like a carrying strap on her. So what we did in a lot of the rooms is we would sit her on her butt and she'd just point at the ceiling and then she would like reflect light down. So although there was no light in the house, we had plenty of light with just Big Mama alone.
Yes. In the videos, it looks like the house had electricity because of Big Mama. Like now when I'm looking at it, when I was explaining, oh, there's no electricity, when I've been showing the videos to like friends and family, they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, oh, yeah. No. That's just Big Mama.
Yeah. Well, and when she met her demise, when I was home, Ben was like, oh, she won't turn on. And I was like, he didn't say she because he was calling it a flashlight and didn't realize that she was, again, a full member of this cast now. I was like, that's Big Mama. I was like, she died. And he's like, well, did you charge her? And I was like, it's a USB to USB charge. Like, you can't buy that at a fucking Walmart. That's like a specialty plug now, which is insane. And so we had to like buy a charger. Rest assured, she's back to life. So she's ready for future adventures in the dark.
Great.
You're welcome.
I'm very happy about that. Like, truly happy.
No, yeah. Like, Big Mama helped because like, okay, so she's rechargeable, which meant that she couldn't get checked. So she had to go in my bag along with the other like 19 flashlights and 7,000 batteries. And some stranger lost his AirPod, and I was like, hey, I have a flashlight in my bag if you would like to use it. He was like, yeah. And I was like, I just need to warn you that it's comically large. And he was like, yeah, it's fine. I was like, no. I was like, you don't understand. And I pull it out and he was like, I did not expect a flashlight that big. And he's like, and you warned me. I was like, I know. And we found his AirPod because of it.
Yep. She's truly
Big mama.
a big helper.
Yeah.
So yes, flashlights. I brought lanterns.
Mm-hmm.
So a few of us had the lanterns out and it helped. Not as much as Big Mama, but it helped. We brought the spirit box along and I talked about that in the Elms Hotel. But what that is it's a little device and it is said to be able to communicate with paranormal entities. And what it does is it sweeps through FM or AM stations. And when like the energy changes or something needs to be heard, it typically will stay on that for a moment. So you'll hear a voice or something coming from the static.
It is an interesting tool. As always, I will describe it as I always do, which is Bumblebee from Transformers.
But sometimes the voice will sound like it's in the room with you. Like it's not a radio sound. It sounds so like not hollow. You know what I mean?
Yes, it will sound fluid.
Yes. Inika also brought the Necrophonic app on her iPad. And we're just going to quickly run through the App Store description. And it says, Necrophonic is an app used for spirit communication and EVP research. It has 8 sound banks, and the audio has been mastered in a way to bring out various sound properties. And so it has the 8 sound banks, but the audio itself has been made up of partial words, various reverse audios, foreign languages, all parts of speech you can think of.
I just want to point out, so Amanda said that it uses 8 banks. So Spirit Box, its banks are the FM or AM radio stations.
Yes.
Right? That it goes through. So the Necrophonic app, it has like a closed universe. So it doesn't just go on your phone and listen to you. It doesn't go to Spotify. It has closed circuit. Only these 8 sound banks are where it goes from, which I just thought was interesting.
And also something when I got home, I researched it a little bit too, just because I was a little concerned with it being an app because I haven't used apps like that before. And it said that it does not ask for permissions to use video or audio. And then Eni also had it on airplane mode with like Wi-Fi off. There was really not great signal there anyways.
Yeah, even if she had wanted to have it on. In the sound banks that it has, when we say like foreign languages, we mean that like there's sound clips of like syllables from foreign languages that might not be in English. There are no full words in it. So it's not as though it's just like a random word generator.
Right. And yeah, so when I got home and I was, researching about it and just kind of playing with it, I downloaded it and it was just gibberish. Like nothing came through at all. No real words, nothing that made sense. And I'm like, okay, interesting. Because while we were there, especially when we were using it, and we're going to talk about how we used it, but I was sitting next to someone that had headphones on listening to it. And I could kind of hear it here and there. And those words made sense to me. Perfect sense. But while at home, it was just nonsense.
Yeah.
In my head, too, it reminded me of an Ovilus. And I've talked very highly of Ovilus, how it has its word bank in there and it works kind of like a speak and spell. But this just has the little syllables. But very interesting the way that it works.
Yes. And one of the things that we asked while we were there, because we had never used it before, is we asked, is it always creepy? Because the times that we had used it, some of the things that it said were unsettling. And Inika also told us like a very, I think, darling story about her experience with the Necrophonic app. She had a situation where she was like at a park with her dog and she turned it on and she heard like dog, 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 and like what sounded like a child's cadence. And her dog was like wagging its tail like it was being pet. That's like the way I remember her telling the story. But I was just like, oh, that's like a very sweet, like little like ghosty story, but also,
yeah,
so different from what we experienced, which makes me even more like,
Yeah, and especially, when I turned it on at home and it said nothing weird. It didn't really say anything. So I'm excited to try it again and learn more about it. So let's talk about getting to Villisca, because I think all of us had a little bit different vibes going in. Lindsay, Nora, and I arrived last because we were at Malvern for so long. We were running a little late. So we got there at like dusk. Like the sun was starting to set. We still had light for a little bit. I will say when we got there, we kind of scattered because we're like, we only have so much light left. We need to unpack the car. We need to get all of our snacks and everything in the barn, which was next door to the house. I'll describe that real quick. So the barn was behind the house and it had electricity. So that was kind of like our station, if you will, because we had our snacks, our food, electricity, bathroom, everything was there. And so we're trying to unpack our car and then also get like a first look at the house too before it got too dark.
As a reminder, the house did not have electricity.
No.
And it had been restored to what it looked like at the time of the murders in 1912. So there was also not indoor plumbing, from my understanding.
No.
Because there was not indoor plumbing when we were there. It was in the barn.
Yeah, it was in the barn. And then there are like AC or heater units in there, but they were never on the whole time we were there. I don't think that they worked, but I could be wrong. Anyways, so we're unpacking. We're all kind of everywhere. We're meeting the girls for the first time too. And of course, church. And as we're unpacking at some point, I want to say you and Nora ran into the house to quickly get a first look. And I had like a handful of stuff. So I was just like, I'm going to take it in the barn before I meet them. But once I was in the barn, I was alone. And I'm like, oh, I guess I'm going to look around in here real quick. And the barn is sectioned into 2 different rooms in a sense, outside the bathroom, of course. But I was in the front room putting our stuff down. And then I see in the back room, there's a bunch of writing all over the wall. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I go back there to just kind of walk around and, figure it out. There's also stairs that go up to the top of the barn. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I'm in the second room of the barn and I'm walking the wall. So like the perimeter of the wall inside, reading everything and just seeing all these people that have been there before. And I hit the wall that kind of divides the first room and the second room. And as I'm standing there, I all of a sudden get really teary-eyed and just sad and uneasy. And it was just incredibly sad there. I don't know why. And for me, I just chalked it up to I'm in an area which was rebuilt. It's not even like the original barn, but I'm in an area where, the axe could have been taken off the wall or taken from the barn. Or I had also seen pictures of the kids when you walk in the barn. There's pictures of the family. And I'm like, it's probably just that. And it probably just hit me. And I didn't think about it again. I was just like, okay, it's weird here. And I did tell the girls, I'm like, I felt really strange in the back of the barn, but I didn't think anything of it. It wasn't a big deal at this time.
Yeah.
When I walked in the house, I honestly didn't feel much at all. Again, I think it was like thinking of children getting murdered. I had that in the back of my head and I'm like, that's so awful. The whole family, but children in particular for me. And when I walked in there, I'm like, I feel sad, but I don't feel like anything's here right now. I felt like this is going to be the easiest investigation night I've ever done.
Mm-hmm.
And after reading a few books about it, some of them are like, we'll go on certain nights and nothing at all will happen. And I was almost kind of bummed. I'm like, this is going to be one of those nights where nothing happens and we're just going to be walking around all night. But anyways, Nora felt very similar to me. She told us that she didn't really feel much when we got there. So we were kind of in the same boat there. And Lindsay, what were your first impressions?
As Amanda mentioned, we were coming from Malvern, because we won't shut up about it, where there was a very real feeling of there being lots of entities.
Yes.
Like a palpable feeling. So Amanda and I both read A Nightmare in Villisca before coming. So did Lexi. But I think that kind of colored our expectations. I was thinking of the worst, scariest things. Like Amanda mentioned, sometimes nothing happens. But what sticks in your head is the really scary stuff. Like the fact that 2 people stabbed themselves. So when I was prepared to be scared and to feel something. So it was so strange when I felt nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost kind of like feeling numb because it wasn't good. It wasn't bad. It was just nothing. And so I almost had this disappointment feeling. But
yeah,
with that in mind, walking around the house, I still had the reverence for the fact of what happened there. It's still a sad place, especially when you go into the Stillinger girls' room. It felt just heavy and sad.
Yes.
So before we went, I really wasn't sure what kind of entities or who I thought was there. Like I didn't have any firm opinions. But as soon as I got there, even while feeling numb, I just became like, I wrote it as a gut knowing rather than a gut feeling. In my bones, I was like, this is true and this is true and that is not. And nothing will change my mind. because like there's no way to prove some of these things. But I was like, for me, I now know some things and I have no reason to know them, which I thought was very interesting and is not something that I have experienced in such an unflappable way.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about all that later too. But I just felt like that was like an important part of like my initial introduction. And welcome to True Creeps, where our animals make sounds. Moo's just click-clacking around. She's walking downstairs. She's walking into the room. She's doing her life. I'm sorry.
So, like I said, Nora, Lindsay, and I got there after Lexi, Inika, and Chrissy got there. They got there mid-afternoon, so it was very bright out still. Lexi said that she also didn't feel very much when she entered, but she did feel the weight of the sadness of what happened in the kids' room, which makes sense. Like, we all know the story of what happened. So, Inika also felt heaviness in the Stillinger girls' room, and she also felt like the kids were watching her in their room. Interesting. It seemed like most of us thought that it was just going to be an easy night, not much activity.
Yeah. And we mentioned this in previous episodes, but we're just going to say it here again. So obviously Amanda and I have met, although we were once strangers from the internet. And Nora was Amanda's friend from Arizona. I'd met her like once, a treasure, a delight. But we had never met Lexi, Eni, or Chrissy before in person. And so truly a mixing of people who had never met before for the most part, and who certainly had never done anything like this together because, you know, I've known Amanda for years, but we had never done something this intense.
Yeah.
So I just think that that's kind of like an important thing to note, that we're all going in with a very interesting kind of relationship to one another. So from my recollection, Amanda and I were still wandering around the house and getting a sense of things when Inika began doing pendulum work. I want to think that they were talking to Mrs. Moore or something that said it was, but we weren't a part of that, so I don't necessarily want to comment on it.
Right.
Amanda, I forgot to put it in the list above, so she didn't mention it before, but she brought a trail cam with her. And so how it was supposed to work, notice that's supposed to, is that when it senses motion, it was supposed to take photos for a set period of time. I read the instructions and I set it up to take photos for 3 minutes after it detected any movement. So what we did was we originally put it up in the kids' bedroom. It was in the far corner, so it was facing like the entrance to the room in the closet. And as we moved throughout the night, we moved the camera. So when we went to the kids' room, we moved it into the parents' room. When we went to the parents' room, I held on to it, and then I put it into the kids' room before we went downstairs. So it moved around.
Yeah.
So now we're going to talk about the different type of investigations that we did, because from this point on, we really did do everything together, which I think is for the best. So we went up to the kids' room first, and the way that it's set up is that when you first walk into the room, on the left, there is a crib, and it's a smaller section of the room. And on the right, there's the closet door. And then there is one bed. And if you're looking straight from the entrance to the room, there is a bed and then a window. Then there's various tables with toys to the right of the bed in front of the window. Other investigators have seen the closet open on its own. So that's one of the reasons why we faced the trail cam there. When I moved it later in the night, I also positioned it so that we would be able to see the door opening if it did. It didn't. And the toys were relatively lightweight. So I think the idea is this way they would be easier to move. So we talked to them in the room. We asked them to move the trucks. They did not. Inika also read them a very cute story. And we didn't really see any activity in the room, but it did like feel like something was there. It just kind of felt light. It didn't feel like it wanted to be perceived to me.
Yeah.
The idea that Inika had of like being watched or noticed, but not interacted with, I think is very much how I would describe it. So in the Elms Hotel, Amanda mentioned that, correct me if I'm wrong, your husband's cousin-in-law.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Is a medium who has been doing it for quite some time. And in his conversations with Amanda, proven himself to her, she believes him.
Yeah.
Amanda explained her experience to Robert.
So the following morning, actually, while we were driving back to Kansas City, Robert had called me and he was just like, hey, you guys did a good job last night. And I was like, oh, thanks. You know, like, because he had told us very strongly that we need to be protected and really take it seriously as far as like bringing only good energy in and trying to stay positive and grounded the entire time because whatever is here sometimes likes to mess with people. And so in the back of our head, like we very much had that. And I shared that with our group too. Some of the things that he said. I had a 3-page thing that I wrote from my conversation with him, but he said, you guys did a good job and that we combated whatever it was very well. And we'll talk about more at the end. So he told me that before I even had a chance to say anything, really.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, cool. Thanks. But one thing that he mentioned is when we were reading the book, he's like, you guys did something for the kids while you were there, right? And then that's when I said, yeah, we read the book. And he's like, there were 2 girls watching you. He didn't say names. He didn't say who. He said what he thought it might be. Now he knows about the house. Like he had gone years ago before knowing about the house, and then he researched it after going. But he did say 2 little girls were listening. Who they are, I'm not sure. He theorized that it might have been one of the Stillinger girls and one of the Moore girls.
Yeah, which I think is very interesting. And we'll talk more about everything as we continue on. So there wasn't really anything that happened when we were upstairs. So we were like still on our, there's not going to be much happening tonight kind of vibe. So we all went downstairs into the living room and we did our first spirit box session. Most of the questions at that point had to do with the Moore family and the Stillinger girls, because the Stillinger girls, by the way, are the friends that we talked about. But we asked how many people were in the room with us, and we all heard 12. And then we said, does that include us? Because that would be a lot of ghosts if there was 12 ghosts in the room, right?
Yeah.
And then some of us heard the word absolute in response to that. Then Amanda was talking about church being fine. And then the spirit box, unprompted, said something. Now, what I heard was pet cat. And I didn't hear it at the time. I heard it when I was re-listening to things, because we re-listened to and rewatched all the videos and such in preparation for today's episode.
Yeah.
So there's things that we noticed after the fact that we didn't notice in the moment, especially because we're so excited, we're talking, and sometimes spirit box is talking while we are. And so you can't hear both. And sometimes it's very quiet. So I thought that was interesting. Nora asked if the Moore family was there with us, and she didn't hear a response, so she asked again. And then at the time, some of us heard the word some, others heard the word 8. As I was rewatching and re-listening to everything, I very much tried to stay intensely focused on everything I was hearing, because I knew that there was going to be things that I didn't hear when I was there. And I know that ghosties sometimes get picked up on audio, but you wouldn't hear it otherwise. When I was watching the video of the spirit box session, it sounded like there was a very low and deep no that was kind of breathy.
Right after she says, did I hear some? It does sound like no.
So I was like, oh, at that one though. That one kind of got me. So Amanda then asked if the Stillinger girls were there, and some people heard the box respond, maybe. Then we asked how old whoever we were speaking to was, and they said 6. Then we asked if it was certain people in the family, and there were mixed responses on whether people heard yes or no. So then we asked whether they liked Patty. They said yes. We all agree that we heard that. And then we said, have you seen Patty before? And it very much sounded like, to all of us, that it said, I have. Then we said, would you talk to us upstairs? And it said, sure. So we were like, okay, we're going to head upstairs. There was also a point where someone asked, are you keeping an eye on the house? And in the video, Amanda says, I'm getting goosebumps. And Nora nods. Lexi says she has a cold chill. Enika says that it got colder. And this is part of the video, I think, where I saw some type of weird light anomaly on the floor, which I completely fucking forgot about until now. That was not a flashlight. I was like, hey, can you move your flashlight to Chrissy? And she did. It stayed. And then I was showing everyone around me, what is this? And then we went upstairs, because at that point I was like, I feel like I've made it very clear a little bit already that I do not think that the Moore family is there. And so my soul of soul was just I will hang out while y'all think that you're talking to the Moore family, but I don't think it's them. So I'm just going to stay quiet, because I'm just going to ask questions that have nothing to do with what you guys want to talk about. And I don't want to be a dick. So I was just kind of hanging out. And so when I was on my phone, I was like, oh, this is interesting. And it felt like the first time where I was like,
Yeah. And what got me is Well, I went into the house thinking there's a possibility something could be here, right? Like someone could be the Moore family, could not be. Like from the book that we read, it kind of swayed me to say no, but also like people feel different things, or like some spirits feel comfortable coming through to certain people versus others. So I was like, it could be anything. It could be anyone.
Yes.
But especially for how many maybes we got and the way that the book referenced that something wants to fuck with you, I started going, that's kind of a way to fuck with them. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm that, you know?
Yes. It very much, it wanted to keep us interested.
Yes.
And the night crescendos.
Yes.
It builds. It's not as though it's nothing and then all of a sudden it builds slowly.
Yes. Agreed.
So it feels like it knows how to build suspense, which is very bizarre.
Yes.
There's also a point during this spirit box session in the living room where someone says, is there someone here not from the Moore family? And then we heard yes. Why? And then there was something else that was clearly a man's voice, but we couldn't understand what it said.
Yeah, I tried to slow it down. It still didn't really make sense to me. But again, like when we're listening to this, and especially from the videos, if someone shuffles, it's an old house.
Mm-hmm.
It makes a lot of noise.
It does.
So sometimes it's hard to distinguish what something's saying because of shuffling. Or, you know, there's 6 people in a tiny living room. So no fault of anyone's, except for us not having the best equipment.
Us learning what equipment would be best, because we were there for an experience, not to necessarily make content.
Right.
The content was a side effect and a bonus that we can talk about it. So I like that we focused on that, but it does mean that sometimes like there's not a ton of stuff that we could put on here where it's not just going to hurt your ears, right? Like you don't want to listen to 50 minutes of spirit box like at you. That is not a fun time. So we'll have clips after the outro of some of the spirit box sessions from this room and from other times.
Yeah. So after the spirit box session, we start going upstairs to the parents' room, and we will have some pictures online of what the house looks like and like what room is which. We'll label them. But the parents' room is attached to the staircase. So once you go up the staircase, you are inside the parents' room.
And the banister is on the edge of the room.
Yeah, it's kind of like a loft room. Think of that.
That's what I wanted to point out, is that facing the stairwell, there's not a wall. There's a banister.
Yes. Which also intrigues me for the night of the murders, because at least I'm a very light sleeper. I would hear someone coming up the stairs, but also with having kids downstairs, you might think, oh, one of the kids is coming upstairs, or maybe they're coming up to get their friend, you know, the Moore kids, because the Moore kids' bedroom's attached.
The style of the house, I think it was probably loud then too.
Yes, because it's just wooden stairs.
Mm-hmm.
But very interesting because it is very loud when you move. So we all filed into the parents' room, and in this order. So Nora went first, Lindsay was behind her, then Chrissy, and then Enika, and then Lexi and I were last. And as soon as Nora stepped between the bed and the dresser, she immediately began to cry. And we actually have a clip of what happened, so we'll play that now.
Before we play it though, Amanda, is Nora a crier?
Not that I've ever seen. She's always very happy, right? At least your experience with her too.
Yeah, but we'll play it now.
Yes.
What? Does the church follow us? Yeah. Ooh. What?
You all right?
Yeah. Okay. Here. Okay. Oh, that was strong. Ooh. That was so weird. Okay. What did you feel? I can't describe it. It was like, oh man, I never cried. Oh, that was intense. Ooh, that was just like a blanket of sadness.
Did you feel like you had a sadness coat on?
Yeah. Like
That's what I was saying earlier.
That's
That's how
Yeah.
it felt in the barn when you
Yeah.
go back in the back of
Yeah.
it. But like, yeah.
I'm gonna sit in the corner over here.
So weird.
So before we recorded our Nora parts today, and I didn't realize that Amanda was gonna give her audio to re-experience this moment.
I wanted her permission to be able to share it with everyone.
Oh, yeah. No, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. But yeah, watching her re-experience, it was very interesting.
Yes. It was a lot.
So this is our conversation with Nora.
I remember going up the stairs and just being like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Nora, are you okay? And immediately like, I will fight a ghost if I need to. I'm going to lose, but I will fight them for you.
I was like, oh, she's feeling ghost feelings. And look, we're podcasters, but now we're content creators. So I had the trail cam, and I was joking when we were elsewhere later that I tastefully moved the camera underneath Nora as she was crying. It was a very Blair Witch angled.
Very Blair Witch.
Just like, so that it wasn't like I'm filming you, but it was recording the event, because so much of the really big things that I felt like happened weren't things that were recorded. And I was like, and then the trail cam still said, fuck you. But there's a video of me being like, moving the camera.
Shameless plug.
Yeah.
Like, well, like she's crying and having this moment, and I'm like, camera.
But you know what? Immediately, once like, we made sure she was okay first.
Oh,
yeah.
At least I didn't have like snot.
We're looking around because we had gone up there for a moment, but not like really explored too much altogether, at least. And we're like, oh my gosh, exactly where she's standing is where whoever did this murdered the parents. Like exactly what she had walked through. There's still the axe mark on the wall there. And so like she was standing perfectly where that would have happened. And so it's just wild that she got that feeling. Not anger, but like sadness.
Yeah. I think that it's such a unique experience that having like an emotion that is not yours and being so aware that it's not.
Yes.
And I think like I described it like when we were talking that night as like I felt like I was like wearing a jacket of somebody else's emotions, because it wasn't as deep as if it was mine, but I still felt it like it was very real.
Right.
And so Nora has her blanket. I have my jacket. Do you have another metaphor for what it feels like to have a ghost emotion?
No, it's more just like, yeah, almost like possession in a way for a moment where you're like, I'm not sad about anything. I'm fine. Or, if you're in a spooky place, you're going to feel a little uneasy. But like, especially when your eyes start to water and you're like, what is happening to me? Like, I'm not doing this to myself. But now I'm sad all of a sudden. And it's weird. Or it's always at like the most ridiculous of times where you're like, nothing should be happening right now. And then all of a sudden, for Nora especially, like we're in a big group. We're all laughing as we're like going up the stairs and in a good mood. And then all of a sudden, or like earlier when I described the barn, I just went in there for a few seconds. I did not expect anything to happen, especially because we didn't feel anything prior to it. And then all of a sudden my eyes are welling up. So weird.
And to set the tone from here on out, it felt like a lot.
It truly did. Yes, something started to change, I would say here, where it started to get more intense. And then after this, it gets even more intense.
I think this is when it picks up that it has people who might speak its language.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
That we are aware, if you will.
Mm-hmm. And looking back at it, I do think that we fed it a little bit, if that makes sense. Like fed it some energy.
Oh, we absolutely fed it a lot. We fed it so much energy.
And that might make sense as to why it got a little more aggressive. I don't know. I don't know how to, like, the feeling was aggressive to me.
I agree that it felt aggressive, but I would say like it in its of itself was aggressive. I would say bold.
Yeah.
Like it got more daring.
It did.
It got more arrogant.
I think, yeah, that's perfect.
It thought it would get whatever it wanted, is very much what I got from the something else, as I call it later in our outline.
Yes, I agree. And I think if anyone wants to read that book, I think it's spot on.
Mm-hmm. And while we had Nora, we also wanted to get her opinion on another clip we heard that may have involved her. So one of the things that we did upstairs after we settled down was we did spirits box sessions. And in a minute, we'll talk more about where everybody was positioned in relation to each other, because it's kind of important for things we'll talk about in a bit. But for this, just know that Nora was sitting between the bed and the dresser, that dresser that like she used as kind of like her landmark right earlier. And behind her was that axe mark. So we were asking something if it could touch the green light. And again, we'll talk more about it in a moment, but Nora hasn't heard this clip. And so we're going to play it here now. We were originally going to put it at the end, but because we're going to have Nora's response to it, it feels like we should have it now. So we'll have it as it sounds, and then we'll also have it slowed down, because it's the slowed down version where you can really hear it. Because at first, Amanda and I disagreed on what it was. And then when we both slowed it down, I was like, oh, no, I agree with you. It is very much that. So, okay, Nora, are you ready? You're going to listen to it at regular speed first, and then I would slow it down to like 50% if you can.
I'm scared.
Do you not like the green light?
It sounds like a garbled voice. I want to say it says, I do not.
That's similar to what Lindsay heard at first. I couldn't hear that. I heard something else.
Uh-huh. Okay. So now the slowed down version of the clip.
Ugh, I get chills again.
I know.
I don't know what I'm hearing. What does he say? It's definitely a male voice. So I hear a man's voice, and to me, it sounds like he's either said, I said no, or I don't know. That's what I hear.
I heard do not like. And then, Amanda, what did you hear?
So I heard right behind you.
Oh,
And then when I slowed it down, I no longer heard do not like, because you can hear the behind, like you can hear like the syllables with it in a different way than like do not like, right? Like do not like would be more staccato.
mm-hmm.
But then I slowed it down and I kept going between right behind you or look behind you.
So listen to it now.
Do you not like the green light?
Oh shit! I heard I'm behind you.
But like certainly behind you. And this is in response to you asking a question.
Yeah.
Is it the space where you are? Is it because the axe mark is behind you? Isn't that unsettling?
Yeah.
You can definitely hear the behind you part
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know what the first word is, but behind you.
because it gets like broken up.
Because it's the cadence of how you say behind you as well.
Uh-huh. I heard I'm behind you.
Don't like that. Don't like any of it. Don't like any version of it.
No.
That's what I heard. That is weird. Ugh.
You're welcome.
Because, yeah, she kept saying, oh, I think it's this. And I was like, no. Slow it down. It's fucking creepy.
I got goosebumps.
And then she's like, sweet fucking God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unsettling.
Yes.
And I wasn't sure, like, we were debating if it was talking to you. Because, yeah, behind you is the axe mark and where whoever it was would have been standing. But I didn't know if it was speaking to Lexi because she was talking right before this clip.
Mm-hmm.
Or to you, because either way, behind Lexi was the staircase. And while we were here, I kept having to adjust my legs because I was sitting on the staircase. Like, I was sitting up in the room with my legs on the staircase, and I kept adjusting my legs because I felt like someone was going to walk up.
Mm-hmm.
So either way, something behind someone, very unsettling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The parents' room, I think by far was one of the most active places that we experienced.
100% it was. And I wonder if I was feeling like the mother's sadness. Like a part of me wondered if I was feeling like the mom's sadness because am I remembering correctly? It was the husband first and then the wife.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So if that's really what happened, obviously she had to have woken up like as it's happening to her husband. And she like comes into this like moment of realization of like what's happening around her, like what is the current situation. So I feel like, I don't know, I feel like that was like what hit me was her sadness.
Throughout the night / morning, did you think it was the family that was there? Like, did you think that?
In the beginning I did, but then towards the end, I started to think like, we're being punked here. Like, I don't think it's the family.
And a lot of people have agreed with you, Nora, as far as mom energy being there.
Mm-hmm.
Lexi, Lindsay, and I read a book before we went. Lexi actually recommended it to me. And in there, it talks about how some people have suspected that Mrs. Moore is still there, and other people have thought that they've seen Mrs. Moore. So interesting that that's what you felt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now we're going to continue to tell you about our spirit box section upstairs. Thank you, Nora. We'll hear more from her at the end of the episode.
So after a few minutes, we all sat down in the room. And where we were sitting is important to note for the way that we describe things later. As we mentioned, like, this house is tiny, This room is very small. There's enough room for the bed and the dresser for the most part. So not a lot of space. We were sitting pretty close, and it was around the bed. In the way back corner beside the dresser was Inika. Then on the other side of the dresser was Nora. And then Chrissy was kind of tucked between it, the bed and the dresser. After that was Lindsay sitting with her back to the banister. Lexi was next to her. And then I had my legs down the stairs and sitting on the top step.
Yeah, and I actually had like my back kind of against the attic door. And then I had the little kids' room next to me.
Yes. So the way, again, it's a very tiny room. And I don't want to call it a hallway, but there's this little tiny area that has the attic door. And then it goes into the kids' room. So super tiny, not a lot of space. And then as we were upstairs, Church then joins us. He just trots up the stairs, walks past us, and goes and lays in the kids' room.
I have very cute photos of Church during this, by the way. Shocker.
Yeah, he joined us for a bit. And I was very concerned. I'm like, maybe he's not allowed in this house. But the way that he walked around that house, he's the new owner. So we start the spirit box session, and we have the spirit box on the bed itself so all of us can hear. And we asked over 100 questions, and we're not going to go through each one. It's too long. We will add some of the clips, though, after the outro. So if you do want to listen to it, you can hear some. We asked a lot of questions about who we were talking to, but it never really gave us a clear answer. Throughout the evening, some people thought we were talking to Mrs. Moore. And I will say, after experiencing everything, I am convinced that it's this trickster thing or some sort of entity that likes to pretend to be something and then gets bored pretending to be that and kind of changes. I think whatever it is likes to mess with people and wants to be what you want it to be for a while. And then it just gets bored with it. And it's like, Mrs. Moore is boring and changes.
Oh. So you think it's just one thing there?
I do.
Oh, interesting.
After now being there, I absolutely think that it's just one entity. I don't want to call it a spirit. I think it is something, not someone.
Yeah, again, in our outline, when I was writing stuff down, I was like, capital S, capital E, something else. Like, I don't know what, just something else. I do think that there are also spirits there, but I do think that there is something else as well.
I might get on that boat of there might be some sort of vortex or something that calls like a moth to a flame type thing where it's so active there that things might filter through. But I'm saying something that just stays in that area. I think it's just one thing.
Oh, that's fair. When I'm talking about what I think, it's from our experience there.
Got it.
I think that the something else has been there for over 125 years. I think that it was there and still is there.
Yes.
But I also, again, in my bones, like every part of me, I think that there was also the spirit of a mother and two daughters, but not any of the ones that were murdered there. I do think that spirits can travel and go to different places and get stuck in places. So there's also like a shit ton of old furniture in there. How many things have we covered of like haunted stuff?
Haunted objects. Yes.
And people can carry people with them.
That's true. I think, though, we were only talking to one thing that whole night. I don't think that we were talking to anything else. I think it was a trickster. And yet, like, I believe that there could be other things, or perhaps the Moore family checks in occasionally. I don't know. But I hope that they don't. You know, I hope that they're like fine and out of there. But I really think that what we were talking to that night was one thing.
That's interesting. We'll get into some automatic writing stuff later, but I feel like it was a mother and two daughters, but I don't know if it was because something else was acting like that or if it was because that's what was there.
I'm convinced, yeah, it's one thing with different hats that it likes to wear to warm up to people. Because then it can feed better, you know, like feed the energy better by making you feel like you're safe to talk to it.
Yes. And so we're going to keep going with our spirit box because you'll get to understand why we got comfortable with the spirits that were there, because we keep talking about the something else, right? And you're like,
Why? Yeah.
what the fuck are you talking about? Why? Let's keep going. Let's keep chugging along.
So Inika was asking questions from her TikTok stream, and At one point, the spirit box quite clearly said TikTok, and we all kind of joked about that because we're like, okay, like, how would it know TikTok? And then as we thought about it, we're like, how many TikToks did we see of people walking through that house? I looked on TikTok before I went. I was like, I want to see the layout again. I want to see what was happening last week here, you know? And there's so many. But the spirits or whatever is there has heard the word TikTok before, because in these people's TikToks, they're like, I'm going to make a TikTok. This is my first TikTok, or, you know, whatever. So maybe it learned about TikTok. Whoever we were talking to liked Johnny. And we brought up Johnny several times, and each time, like, it responded. And from some of our research, we have seen that the spirits might have gone over to Johnny's house.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say it was either on one of the episodes of one of the ghost hunting shows we watched, or maybe one of the books. We've done a lot of research on this in the last few years. But in one of them, Johnny had mentioned that something had followed him home before. And so we asked about it. We're like, have you visited Johnny's house? And it said just once.
Very clearly as well.
Mm-hmm. And then we also asked, like, do you like spending time with his family? And it seemed like it did. And I want to say in one of the ghost hunting episodes from years back, they suspected that it was Mrs. Moore that was coming to visit him, and that someone may have seen her at one point. But interesting. And maybe she was there a while, years ago, and maybe she's not now. We don't know. So the entity also said that it didn't know whether it could leave. And we were asking, like, have you tried? And there's various things that we heard. Some heard, I'm working on it, while others heard, but my kids are here, which very sad.
Very sad, but also those are very different statements.
Mm-hmm. Over the course of the session, we found that it also liked piano music. And when we would ask questions about the piano or the piano music, it would return piano music to us. So if we mentioned piano or do you like to play piano, we would hear piano music through the spirit box.
And Amanda, you've used these way more than I have. Do you typically hear music in them?
No, I haven't heard music really. And I like, is it a possibility? Absolutely. Because it's using FM or AM. I want to say we were on AM at the time, but it uses radio frequency. So is it possible? Absolutely. But in the time that we were in the home, that entire time before this part, we never heard the piano. And it was only certain times of this. And then we never heard piano again.
Mm-hmm.
So we did play a couple songs because we're like, well, maybe you want to hear piano again. Like, when's the last time someone played piano in this home? If it was Mrs. Moore and she liked piano, let's play it. Chrissy played a couple piano songs. One was an Italian polka. And then the other thing that she played was Baroque piano music. One song was over. It seemed like we would hear the piano music on the spirit box again. So she played another song for it. And during this session, there's a few other things to note that happened too.
So the first thing was that Church left.
Yeah.
And we should have taken that as a warning, but we didn't.
We didn't put two and two together at this point.
We didn't, because when he left, he didn't just casually walk from the room. He got the fuck out.
Yeah, he went under the bed, and then he zoomed down the stairs very quickly.
Mm-hmm. And he went and laid in his chair in the living room that he spent a lot of time in.
Yeah.
But he did go down there and go to sleep. But okay, so Church leaves. And then I call this section cold spots, because it just starts to get a little bit strange. So Lexi and I are back to the banister, and I start feeling cold. And it feels like breezes, right? Like it's intermittent and it's here and there. And by the way, it's already cold in the house, right? And most people know cold spots mean ghosts. So I kind of chalk it up to me having an overactive imagination. You're going to notice that as a theme for me, that I'm not trusting my intuition and I'm not trusting my senses. Like over and over, I kept doing it and I learned a lesson.
I think that was the theme of the night for all of us.
So a lot of us experience times when we second guessed ourselves, but I know I feel like I did it a lot. So I'm sitting there and I just feel like this kind of like tendrils of cold coming up, and it's concentrated, like it's coming from like an air conditioner. So it's like a very intense colder. Eventually it starts getting more intense. Lexi and I kind of start looking at each other out of the corner of our eyes. Like we've been like, are you feeling this? I'm feeling this. And so it's around the same time that Amanda's like, hey, I just felt chills. And she like, the way she describes it in the video is kind of like something went through her. As it came up. But even before that, like earlier, she was saying that like she felt like something was about to walk up the stairs, right?
Yes. Yes. And I even moved my legs because I was like, I don't want you to touch my legs or my feet.
Yeah, yeah. So Lexi and I keep feeling this like cold growing more and more intense. And it's not just like, oh, I'm chilly. It's like you feel it to your bones, right? It's more than just cold. And it's floating up from the ground. So what we both keep doing is we both kind of keep putting like our palms parallel to the floor, feeling around for where the cold spots are. And so Lexi is doing this near an EMF reader. So someone asks, can you touch the little green light? And Lexi's finger involuntarily moves towards the light. And she's like, that wasn't me, right? So then again, we ask for it to touch the little green light. And this is where the clip we played earlier with Nora, this is when this is. But this is the context for what happened right before Nora asked her question, just as an interesting note. So at this point, we are starting to wonder if it's children because, well, one, it touched her hand and because the spirit box said hand. And so we asked if the girls were there with us and the spirit box said girls. And then we asked if it wanted to hold Lexi's hands. And the response that we got from the spirit box, which we all agreed on, was, I'll go through it, which felt really sad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lexi has little guys, and she's like, when they hold my hands, they just hold like a finger or two. They don't hold all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And she could feel something like wrapping around. I think it was like her pointer and her middle finger.
Yeah, there's a video too. She put it on her Instagram.
Yeah. And she's like, I can feel like something wrapping around my fingers. And I was sitting next to her and I like look down and like you can see a color difference on her hand from where like it was colder.
Yes.
And so from there, like we keep feeling cold moving around in waves. There are times where the cold will completely leave and come back. And this kind of happens a few times. At one point, her and I also kind of felt that very similar to both Nora and Amanda, just like this like sudden devastating sad that is like whole body just like devastated. And then as quick as it was there, it was gone.
Mm-hmm.
It was so strange. And so it's during this time where Lexi's like having her fingers held, where I mentioned it in our Elms episode, but I haven't said it here yet. One of the things that I was doing is I was writing all the questions and taking notes as we were going. And so I was taking notes on like the spirit box and the questions we're asking and what's going on with Lexi. And I feel cold around my hand. It almost feels like a little hand. Like that's kind of like the size of it.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like an adult hand. It feels like smaller than that around my hand. So I'm like, okay, this is weird. Like I ignore it at first and then I don't. And so I take my pen and I have the notebook I had. It was like I was holding it like portrait, if you will. So like vertically, like just like a standard notebook. I'm holding it like a notebook, how one does. And on one side there's lines, on the other side there's blank pages. And so I move the pen to the blank page and I'm looking up. I am purposely not looking down at what my hand's doing. And I'm like, in my head, you can move my hand with this pen on this page. Like I won't resist you. And so I kind of just let my hand be pushed around. And as it's like slowing down and I'm feeling that like pressure less, I mention it because I'm like, again, I'm feeling like I'm insane. And I look down and it like looks like scribbles. And so I even like make a joke in like the video, like, oh, I felt this, but like it's just scribbles, see? So I like kind of like say it jokingly, like, oh, that wasn't anything. And everyone who looks at it just looks at it the same angle that I did. And so when I get home, I am showing my husband and he looks at it and he goes, did you turn it? And I was like, no. And so he does. And he immediately shuts my notebook and he goes, did you turn it? And I went, no. And he opens it back up and closes it again and goes, did you turn it? And I'm like, no, we did this like 3 more times. And he's like, Lindsay, do not fuck with me. And I'm like, Ben, I'm not fucking with you. What do you see? I had this notebook for several days. I haven't seen this.
Yeah.
Right? And so you open it again. And as soon as you turn it, it looks not like scribbles. It looks like something very clearly. And everybody who I've shown it to is like, oh, it looks like this. And I would say like that is perhaps trickster-esque.
Mm-hmm.
Something else-esque and not just little kid, because a little kid might draw a flower or something else. They might not draw this particular thing. Or I mean, they might, but it would be, I just feel like it would be strange.
So describe what you think it looks like.
I don't want to. I want people to see it. And I want them to tell me what they think it looks like. Oh, and I asked Johnny if anybody has ever done automatic writing in the house, and he said no one has.
Mm-hmm.
So during the spirit box session, eventually, Big Mama goes out. And Big Mama goes out after the automatic writing session. But right before, the spirit box said, get out. And we're wrapping up our session. I am now like, okay, Lexi has confirmed that she feels cold with me. So I feel like comfortable with that. But my weird automatic writing did nothing. So I feel kind of silly. But I feel this pressure being pushed from my left side, which is the side that is facing the children's room. And when I say pressure, I want you to imagine like that pins and needle feeling when your leg falls asleep, but it's cold.
Mm-hmm.
And that part of your body wasn't asleep.
That's a good way to describe it. Yeah.
Thank you. And I feel that push. And I'm like, maybe I'm just cold, not like second guessing myself, but like it's enough where like I'm uncomfortable by it. And it's only on half of my body. And I'm like, maybe I have some weird medical illness.
Dr. Lindsay.
Like left side of my body syndrome, like I don't know. And then we're wrapping up the spirit box sessions. We've asked things like, is there anything else you want to say? Thanks for talking to us. It said yes. And then, clear as fucking day, it says, hey, Lindsay. And everybody goes, I heard it say, hey, Lindsay. Now, when I listen to it back, I hear, hey, Lexi. But in that moment, I remember hearing, hey, Lindsay. And I remember everybody else saying, hey, Lindsay. But the spirit box, I feel like, doesn't capture it. Like, you can't capture the audio as well,
It's hard, again, because there's so many people. And, like, right before that part happens, when you're listening to the audio from that video, it is someone shuffling or like a noise or someone putting something down, but there's a noise right before it. And then it's like tied to the hey, Lindsay or Lexi. So at this point, after this spirit box session, we're like, well, why don't we go outside and take a break? And we're going to get a snack and just chill for a minute with lights in a bathroom. And then we'll come back in. And as we're heading out, Church is still on the chair downstairs next to Patty, sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
And so I even go, kitty, kitty, like trying to go, do you need to go potty or anything? We're going outside. And he doesn't even budge. So I'm like, I'll check on him in like 5 minutes because I do not want a kitty to make a mess in here without us.
Yeah.
So all of us go outside and Lindsay and I go to grab something from the car. And I'm like, we should check on Church and see if he wants out now. And the moment I open that door, he runs out, like bolts out and goes down by the barn.
Mm-hmm.
So we're all in there in the barn and eating snacks, hanging out, chatting about what just happened. And for some reason, we all brought enough snacks for like 20 people. Like we were going to move in for a week.
Yeah. And eat only processed food.
Oh, yeah. Well, there was oranges.
Except I did say that, no, I bought oranges and carrots because I was like, we'll need these too.
And I got grapes.
But I don't know why I would only buy orange produce. Yeah, Amanda brought grapes, but they weren't rinsed, so they had a film.
Yeah. But we're just hanging out. And we all hang out for a little bit. And then it's about midnight, a little after midnight, and we go back into the house. Now, at this time, I think Lindsay and I were last going in, and we were like, Church, come on, let's go inside. And he was laying by the barn and we're, doing the kitty sounds and everything, trying to get him to come. And he will not even look at us. He's like, fuck no, I'm staying out here in my barn, which he did have a lovely place in the barn. He has like food and water, dishes and everything. But he was right outside the barn, his back towards the house and was like, absolutely not. Wouldn't even look at us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I shut the door. I'm like, I'll check on him in 5 minutes again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I see him get up. Like right after we shut the door. So I'm like, he's doing the typical cat thing. Like, I don't want it unless you don't have time for me, then I do,
Yeah, yeah. You're not like, oh, he knows better.
Exactly. So I immediately walk back to the door, open it up again. Same thing. He plops down, looks the opposite way. And like, I think you and I were joking about it. We're like, okay.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah. Like, fine. We get you're too cool for us.
Right. So at this time, we finally settle in the house. And we decide that we are going to take a different approach this time. And when I start this next video that we're going to be talking about, it was 12:42 a.m. at this point.
So notably, we left before the murders had occurred, and we got back when they had happened or were happening.
Right. Yeah, because it's estimated around this time.
Yes.
And one thing I will note is, as we talked about this after we were done, after we leave the home, all of us mentioned that we felt like drawn to the house. Like we wanted to go back in. Just an interesting thing to note.
I would say that we were all like raring to go. Like we were all
Let's do this. Yeah.
eager to get back in the house. Like it wasn't just like, because we had taken a break earlier in the night and the excitement coming back was different. Like it was like we were more like, okay, and more energetic.
Yes. Agreed. So our different approach, I'm going to talk about that. That was using the Necrophonic app. And at this point, we were in the living room, all mostly sitting down in like a big circle. Lexi was the first one to use the app. And the way that she used it was doing what's called the Estes method. And hadn't done it before. I've seen it done in various different ways. But Inika explained it to us as basically one person's going to have noise canceling headphones on, and that they were connected to the iPad with the app on. And they were going to be wearing a blindfold as well, so they can't technically see or hear. All they can hear is the Necrophonic app. So they don't know what we're asking or what we're doing at the time. I've seen this done various times where like the person goes in like a closet or like goes into a full other room and they just have a camera on them. And what they have to do is like match up the audio to see what they were asking at that time. That seems like a lot of work.
I've seen where places have, where people have walkie-talkies too.
Yes, I've seen that.
And also just as a note, spirit boxes, you have that scanning noise. You don't have that with a Necrophonic app, which is very nice.
But sometimes the way that the sounds come through, like I was sitting next to Lexi and it's like, it's eerie.
Oh, it's scary. Like, but it is clearer.
It is very much. Yes. Agreed. So Lexi's volunteered to do it first. So we're in the living room and Lexi got settled in first. She sat down, put the blindfold on, put the noise canceling headphones. So she didn't know where we were sitting or what we were doing to get like prepared for this. Mm-hmm. And she could have heard where we were, I guess, because she didn't have the Necrophonic app going, you know, as we're like talking to each other. But, you know, it would be hard to decipher where everyone is. Mm-hmm. So the way that we were situated is when the session actually began, I was sitting next to Lexi on her left side, next to Patty and where Church was before. And then in this order, it was Lexi, then Chrissy to her right, and Chrissy was sitting at the piano bench, then Nora on the couch next to the piano, and then Lindsay next to her on the couch as well. Inika was standing up, and she was directly across from Lexi, so to my left and in front of Lexi. And eventually, she actually does end up sitting down, and you'll hear why in a moment. But she ends up sitting between Lexi and Chrissy. And Chrissy, I think at that point, had gotten up and sat by you and Nora.
She came to the cuddle couch, as we call it.
The cuddle couch. Yes.
Yes.
So now Nora is third to the right from Lexi. And you'll need to know that.
And that was a long people description. But you need to know that Nora is third from the right.
Yes. But you need to know that before we play the next clip. Because it'll make more sense. Everything Lexi is saying, she is hearing from the Necrophonic app until the end. And you can kind of hear when she's like, it's her, not the Necrophonic app. And also to note, the clip starts with Lexi talking. So now you'll know her voice. Mm-hmm. Here's the clip.
To be
How many people are in this room?
4.
Are you part of the Moore family?
Me.
Who was me?
Ocean.
Oh, she's watching us.
That's why they have that certificate outside.
It's there. Don't worry. The certificate is up.
Do you like having us in the house?
Me. Did you?
Who is me?
More.
You say more?
Yeah. Help.
How can we help?
I don't know. See it?
See what?
The room.
Which room? The bedroom downstairs? Is it a bedroom upstairs?
Okay.
Is it the kids' bedroom upstairs?
Really?
Is it
Yes.
Okay. Is it Mr. and Mrs. Moore's bedroom?
Are you it?
Is it the attic?
Me.
It was me.
Broke.
Broke. Related to the business?
What?
Is it related to the business? Was the business going broke?
Yeah,
Was it because of the competition?
maybe.
Were you arguing with competition?
Cheek? Damn.
Was something happening with the business?
This.
Okay.
This.
Are you mad?
What happened to me?
Oh, no.
Who are you?
Are you mad about what
It just got really quiet, you guys.
Oh.
Maybe
Are you mad about what happened to you?
I'm getting chills.
Are you one of the children?
I really feel nauseous.
Sit down.
Alright. I feel like sick.
You're okay.
Would you like to sit between us? Okay.
Sorry.
Is this better?
What were you thinking?
Are you talking to me?
Who are you talking to?
Her.
Which her?
Next to you is Amanda. I'm Lindsay.
Right?
To your right.
Okay. The person right next to you or next to them?
Is it me?
Oh, I thought you were right, maybe.
Nora.
That is not my name. Okay.
Okay. What did Nora
What are
do?
you thinking?
I feel, oh gosh, that was weird.
Maybe because you might have walked
Number
through.
3 is...
Okay, I am not feeling good about this. Do you need to go outside?
Do we need to stop?
Okay, it's getting late.
Okay, we'll stop.
Yeah.
Oof. I remember what that felt like in the room. The way it felt heavier and different.
It did. And I will say, like, we kind of joke during this too. And Lindsay and I were talking about it before because we're like, we really want to be respectful. And we were. But also when we get kind of stressed or we're trying to console someone, we kind of joke around a lot. And you've probably heard that throughout all of our podcasts too. When we're just saying like really sad things, we'll just start joking sometimes to make ourselves feel a little bit better.
Yeah, we'll do a tangent.
So that was a little bit of a tangent at the beginning there. And that was taken with a cell phone. And I was sitting next to Lexi. So you can hear, I'm holding it like next to my face for some reason. I will never do that again. I apologize. But you can hear the Necrophonic app a little bit in the video.
Yeah.
But when it said sit down, especially we're all like looking back and forth like,
Yeah.
how's it no?
Well, and later we all kind of agreed that doing what it said was probably a bad idea.
Oh, yeah.
But also, who the fuck wouldn't have sat down? No shade to Inika whatsoever. I also would have been like, Ghost says sit, I'm gonna sit.
I would have sat right there.
I was like, I would have been like crisscross applesauce on the ground.
Yes.
Like, sit down, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Will fucking do.
It seemed like, yeah, it was saying to the right when it was like, what were you thinking? And then when it called out Nora, what I was explaining was like, Nora had just walked through something, you know, upstairs a while back before it. So I was like, maybe it's that? I don't know. But it was very bizarre and unsettling. Like, I would say that we were ready to have a break at this moment.
Yes. Yeah. And you hear that at the end too.
You do. I think that was Chrissy saying like, okay, I need a break. And we're like, okay, yeah, like that's fine. We're all game to do that.
So I also wanted to point out though, before we move on, that another instance of us thinking about something later on, but not in the moment. So in the moment, I'm like, Chrissy's playing piano music. Great. I'm not paying attention to what she's playing. On the replay, I see that it's Italian polka music and Baroque. Okay. My brain just files that away.
Yeah.
Notice that when Lexi is talking, she says Baroque and then she corrects it to broke.
Broke.
And I just thought that was so interesting because, yeah, of course, we were thinking like broke's a word. Like, why would she say Baroque? Like, Baroque is also a word, but like, it doesn't seem relevant.
Exactly.
Until you think, oh no, we literally just played Baroque.
And there was a lot of speculation as to the murders being done because of Mr. Moore's business in some sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where my mind went, obviously.
Yeah. So at this point, we're deciding to take a break. And we are all headed out to the barn to take a break, take a moment, and then come back.
In a normal fashion, too. We were fine. Just to say that. We were fine walking out.
Yeah. We were a little bit freaked out. Like, Lexi had been using the necrophonic app. So I think that like she sensed it in a different way than us because she was like, it feels like it's playing with me. She had a different sense than us. So I very much can appreciate that. But I was like, okay, that was weird.
Yeah.
The energy's heavier. It feels different in here. But I'm by no means like terrified.
Exactly.
And so as we're headed out, am I going to map this visually? Of course I am. I want you to picture a circle drawn and 1/4 of a drawn circle, that kind of arch, that kind of slope. That is basically what the pathway between the living room entrance and the back door is. And the back door is the door we've been coming in and out.
Yes.
So that's the archway. Heading out, it's Chrissy first, then me, with Nora behind me, Amanda behind her, and then Lexi and Enoch still gathering their stuff. And so Chrissy is about halfway through that arch towards the door. So she's right in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm about 1/4 of the way out within a fraction of a second. So looking back, I do not remember which was first and which was second because it was so close in time. It was almost simultaneous. And of course, there's no fucking camera because we were just leaving. Like we didn't expect anything to happen. So I remember this, but Amanda remembers me looking left. So it's like, I don't know. It's a little bit of a blur because it was scary. But I'm walking out and I hear footsteps distinct going up the stairs. And so does Chrissy, because her and I are not fucking quiet about it. We're like, holy fuck, right? Like we heard footsteps. And at the same time that's happening, I'm pushed back like so hard that I almost fall into that I've kind of fallen to Nora.
Yeah, she bumped into me.
Imagine someone like pushing you back and you're walking backwards. That's what was happening.
Yes.
And it was involuntary.
And I will say, just watching that, just so everyone could put a picture in their head, when Lindsay's walking, like she's walking kind of with purpose when she's walking forward.
I always do.
And so she's walking towards the back door. And so for her to be, like think about it, when you're walking with purpose, you're kind of like pushing your front forward. For her to throw herself back into another person is very uncharacteristic. Like, obviously, she wouldn't do that on purpose, especially because it's a small house. There's breakables on this little table thing. Like, we don't want to break anything, right?
Mm-hmm. There's also not a hospital for like an hour, and it's the middle of the fucking night.
That too. But let's say she would have like tripped on the wood or something like that. She would have fallen forward because she was walking with purpose forward. But for her to be thrown back, being behind Nora, I couldn't see everything, but the way that we're going out, there's kind of a curve, like she said. So I could see a little bit, but there is no way she could have thrown herself backwards, like herself.
Yeah. Well, there's also like, even where I was, I could just get the fuck out. If I was so scared that I was moving myself, I would have continued my forward momentum rather than moving backwards. Does that make sense?
Yes.
If my reaction to hearing that sound was to like get away, staying in the house isn't getting away.
Right. Because I remember her looking left real quick. And at first I was like, does she want to go upstairs real quick? Or are we going outside? Like it was a split second thing, but I am watching where everyone is because I'm like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And I'm behind everyone. And Nora's kind of tall, but I do see that. And then you say something's on the stairs and then all of a sudden throw yourself back. And I'm like, what? What's happening?
Yeah. So then like there's a clamor. We just get the fuck out. We all get the fuck out. Things are left behind, knees to chest, out of the fucking house.
Yes.
And then so we're in the barn again. We're all creeped out in varying degrees. And I'm not going to give you another layout of a room because you have to be tired of hearing that. But just know that where I'm sitting, I am facing the house and I can see it, but I am not in like a viewpoint where if you were in the house, you could see me. Just an important thing to know.
Yeah.
I have this like feeling of being watched that is very strong. And I have this kind of like, I don't really know how to describe it, but it feels like a pull, like something's trying to pull us back. And I stayed put, other than going to the bathroom at one point. I stayed where I was. I want to think that Chrissy also didn't move, but everybody else kind of moved at least once or twice. And people's opinions kind of changed on whether they wanted to go back in from what I saw based on where they were standing and when they were standing there. Like if you were standing in front of the doorway, you were ready to go back in. If you were standing out of the doorway where like you were further from the house, you were ready to call it a night. And Chrissy was the first of us to be like, oh, I'm not going back in that house. And her Airbnb that she was sharing with Inika was really close. So Nora offered to drive her there. And then she was like, but like, what if we all went? And then we were all like, what if we all did go? And we all got to a place where we decided that that was probably the best. I was super fucking rattled after having like heard the footsteps and being pushed, because now this is like, I've heard my name. I felt pushing in various directions. I'm feeling things touching me.
Mm-hmm.
It feels personal when it's like you keep getting touched.
Yeah.
And it's not something like, okay, I could say like, oh, I'm just being silly and drawing this thing. But I didn't push myself back into Nora.
Yeah, I don't think you physically could the way that you felt.
No. And so, Amanda, like, how did you feel in the barn? And how did it change over time, maybe?
So when I got out there, I was like a little rattled watching you get pushed, right? And my mentality of when I go anywhere or any spooky place is I don't want it to win, in a sense. Like, you're not in charge of me kind of mentality of like, you can't make me do things. Not in a disrespectful way, but more of like, you're not more powerful than me, especially over me, right? Like, I make my choices.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we went out there, at first I was just like, I'm going to go back in. I'm fine. Like, I'm a little rattled. I will admit that. Yeah, especially after seeing that. But no, I'm going back in. I paid to be here. And I want to make sure that, you know, there are no more children being bullied by something in a sense, you know, kind of, I'm a mom. So
yeah.
And, you know, again, I'm still up in the air whether or not there are other spirits there. But I think whatever we were talking to was the same thing. Is there other things there? Perhaps. But what we were talking to, I think, was whatever trickster thing. But anyways, when she was saying people were moving around the room, I had my back to the house and I was kind of in the doorway for a bit. I think I was eating an orange. I was like peeling it. And there's a little trash can thing that I'd go into the bathroom, throw it away, and then come back out. And standing there, I was fine for a little bit. And I was like, yeah, let's go back in. Let's do this. And then I forget who got up, but someone got up. So I was like, I'll sit for a couple minutes in like something elevated, because I've only been sitting on the floor this whole time. Like, I hadn't sat on any furniture or anything. So I sit down and then I'm listening to everyone and I'm like, yeah, if everyone wants to go, like, I don't want to go alone by all means. And then at one point, I don't know if I got up again or maybe I was getting church some treats, but I was in that doorway again for a few minutes. And I was like, okay, I think I feel it. Like, I'm in the doorway and I was looking towards the house a little bit because church kept like going in and out and hanging out with us. And he'd go outside on the little porch thing, then come back inside. And I'm giving him treats and stuff. And I'm looking at the house and I'm like, I feel like something is on like the patio of the house, just like staring. And I'm just like staring back at it like, what? And then as I'm sitting there giving church treats, I hear whispers and I can't describe it. Like, I don't know why, because I can't even tell you which direction they were coming from. It's that I heard them, like, I don't know if it was in my head or what, but the girls' voices, obviously I know each of their voices. I can pick it out on a video or an audio thing, whatever. It was not them, but it was whispers I couldn't understand. And I've never heard that before.
Also, none of us were whispering. Like,
no, we were loud as hell.
There was a
afraid.
palpable energy to all of us. We were speaking with volume.
Yes, and I was actually afraid that like the neighbors were going to come over and go, what the hell are you guys doing? Are you having a party? Because like we're all voicing our opinions very strongly in this barn with the door open.
Yeah.
But no, it wasn't whispers. And I think I even said to you guys, I was like, guys, I'm hearing something.
I do not remember hearing you say that. I only remember it when we get back to the Airbnb.
Maybe it was whoever was standing next to me, but I said like, I'm hearing something.
I think that if I would have heard you say that you were hearing whispers, if it would have registered in my brain, I would have been like, it's time to go. Because
well, we went shortly after.
The way that like, there's what you see, there's what you feel, and there's what you can envision is the in-between, right? So like, it feels almost like there were like wisps or like tentacles, like trying to reach out, like pawing out, like trying to draw us in.
From the house.
Yes. Not like it could reach us, but it was trying to. And in flicks, it was. So, okay, we decide that we're all going to go to Inika and Chrissy's Airbnb. The one where Nora, Amanda, and I were staying was hours away in Kansas City. So we would have just been staying in our car if they weren't lovely enough to let us come hang out with them there. We left ghost hunting equipment, wallets, Enika's iPad, and like we're having the discussion about leaving. And I remember Amanda was like, oh, my EMF reader, all that's in there. And I'm like, do you need it tonight? And she goes, no. And then someone's like, well, my wallet's in there. I'm like, are you going to buy anything tonight? I was like, I'll give you money. We don't need it. And then Enika was like, my iPad's in there. And I was like, do you need it tonight? I kept asking that question, like, do you need it tonight? Because if you don't, let's just go ahead and leave it. And so we made the decision to leave the things. And I had said like, hey, I don't mind going up to lock the door, but I'm not going alone.
Mm-hmm. And I think I was locking up and making sure everything, like nothing was going to spill or make a mess while we were gone.
Yeah. Lando was like doing something else when I had said that. So Enika went up with me. Enika, just fiercest, bravest, best. We're about to walk up and she's like, okay, I'm going to close the door, but I want you to hold onto my jacket. I'm walking behind her and I'm holding the collar of her jacket in front of me, like white knuckling it. I'm like, no one's getting Enika. It's maybe a moment or two after I grab her jacket. We get about halfway up the ramp. I start feeling that push again. But this time it's a lot less drastic. It's more like something being like, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't go back. It's trying to get me to not. But I'm holding on to Enika. It's not just me anymore.
Right.
So it's two people's forward momentum.
Yes.
It gets more intense the closer and closer I get, to the point where I remember being like, it's almost hard to breathe. But I was like, maybe I'm just scared.
Yeah.
And so we're walking up with purpose, like we're going to walk into the house. And as we're walking up, it just feels like something's watching us.
Mm-hmm.
Enika later says that like she just has this idea of someone standing in there grinning, like happy that it got us to come back.
Yeah, like it thought you guys were going back in.
Mm-hmm. And so we open the storm door, like we're going to walk in. She takes one step towards the threshold, darts her hand in, yanks that door shut, and the two of us scramble the fuck down the little ramp. And we're like, oh, I will tell you. So it was just the two of us there, right?
Mm-hmm. We were watching.
It was the scariest energy that I felt all night. Was when we were walking up there. Like every part of my body told me to not be doing what I was doing. And earlier I said I was rattled, right? I would not say that I felt terrified, just that I felt rattled. And what I felt like was a survival instinct. It was like, do not go back in that fucking house. And earlier Amanda was like, oh, I don't want to let it win. I think us going back into the house would have been it winning if we would have went back in that evening.
No, and that's true. That's partially why I was like, okay, I'm game to like leave, whatever. I sent you a video or a picture of you guys closing the door.
Perfect. It's just a fucking blur.
Yeah. So here's one thing though. So as they're closing the door, I'm loading up the car with some of the things that like I still had in my possession that was in the barn. And I turn and I'm watching them close the door and I'm watching the house. And I'm like, the vibe the house gives in these pictures of us leaving is menacing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not friendly. It doesn't look welcoming. It looks just as much personality as you can give to a house. This looks pissed to me.
Yes. When we first pulled up to the house, I almost didn't realize that we were there, even though I've seen pictures of the house, because it's so unassuming in the daylight.
It is. Yes. But at that moment, as we were getting ready to leave, it felt like it was mad that we didn't go back in. Is the vibe. Like looking at it, I'm like, that's, and it's hard to say like when you're looking at a house, but the feeling, like, I don't know, we all had that feeling. And so I snapped a few pictures of the house, and there's a reason I bring this up. So when I first got there, funny enough, I didn't mention it yet, but I did talk to Lexi about it because I was like, I said this, right? Or am I crazy?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But when I got out of the car, one of the first things I said after meeting everyone is I'm looking at the house and I'm just staring at it. And I go, Lexi, what's up with that top right window? And she's like, what do you mean? And I was like, is that the attic or what's in there? I need to know. And she's like, oh, there's like a few chairs with some dolls in the attic. And I was like, weird. I want to go look at it. And so when I first got in the house, I walked around real quick, but then I immediately was like, I want to see this attic. And I think you and I went in there, Lindsay, because we're like, there's a lot of nails. There's a lot of tetanus in here.
A lot of other paranormal investigations, they do a lot in the attic, and a lot of them fuck with the dolls very intensely, because a lot of other investigations are very antagonistic and aggressive because they want a response.
Yes. Yes. And I will never act that way in a haunted location ever.
No.
Yeah. I don't think that's okay. But anyways, so we went into the attic and I took a few photos of it because I was like, that's interesting. All these dolls. I don't know their story. I don't know who they are, but I'm not going to mess with them. And also out of safety reasons, for 6 of us going into that attic, it's really low. The door is very tiny to get in and out. And there's nails, just open nails all over the ceiling. So if someone got scared or stood up too fast or something like that, they would hurt their head a lot. And so we were like, we don't need to do anything in here. It's fine. I mean, we'll be cognizant of if we hear something going on in the attic, and maybe perhaps we would have gone in there. But Lindsay and I immediately were like, I don't think it's safe for us to all be in here at once.
I'm far too clumsy to be in this room, like, not scared.
Right. But the reason I bring up this silly window is when we were leaving, you know how I said the house felt mad, it felt upset. I snapped a few pictures. And when I got home a while later, like I took a few days and all of that, but I was like, that window still, I don't know what about it. And so I played with some of my editing software and I enhanced it a little. I sent it to Lindsay and I'm like, what do you see here? Is it me? What did you see? What do you think?
It's very visibly a figure that has, it looks like they have like an updo almost. So it looks like what I would describe as a feminine kind of apparition figure. It's not opaque. It is translucent, but there is enough detail where I think it's very clear, and we can share those photos too.
Yeah. And I did screenshots. I didn't save it in my editing software because I wanted everyone to see the edit that I had done. Like I didn't add something. I didn't do anything. I did it in Lightroom. But I enhanced the exposure and played with that a little bit because I'm like, I don't know what it is about that fucking window, but I just feel like I need to look at it more. I need to figure out what's in there. And interestingly, when you're looking at it while you're inside the home, if you were looking at that window, you would probably see the back of a chair and maybe a couple of like the back of the doll heads, maybe. Like they're not very tall.
And they're not proportionate to the size of the whatever in the window.
Agreed.
It's not like you're seeing a doll head or a reflection of a doll head or the back of a chair. There's nothing in that room that would make sense to be that.
Exactly. And even during the day when I was like, is there furniture up there? Like what's up there to Lexi? And she described it because I thought like, is there a dresser in front or something? Because you could kind of see like a wood beam or something. And I took some during the day where you can kind of see that. I don't know what the hell was there when we were leaving, but once I enhanced it, I was like, this is not great. And that photo was taken at 1:22 a.m.
I think if I would have seen that photo and understood what it was, I probably wouldn't have wanted to go back the next day.
Maybe. Yeah.
Because, you know, me and a haunted doll, Patty can only do so much, you know? And then we felt bad because we left Patty. We did feel really bad for leaving Patty.
Oh my gosh, we felt so bad.
Again, she had just great vibes.
She did. But whatever that was, like when we were saying what could be in the house earlier or vortex or whatever, it could totally be another spirit connected to a doll.
It could also be Patty.
Or Patty. I mean, Patty, she seems so sweet.
Class act. No, good Patty. Good spirits are Patty.
Yes. But we made it to their Airbnb at about 1:30 in the morning. Once we all got into the Airbnb, we all sat around like the little bar area, kitchen thing, and just unloaded and talked about everything. Kind of like a big recap. And Enika, with her back to the house, felt like she was being watched. And I think we all kind of felt that here and there when we were in the barn. Chrissy said she felt the same thing. This is when we finally like realized, oh, we should have been listening to Church. Church wouldn't even look at the house. And, you know, he followed us around the entire time before that. And then when things were getting a little weird in the parents' room, he went downstairs. And then when we left, he didn't want to go back in. And so we're like, why didn't we listen to the cat? For all of us being such animal people, we didn't listen to the cat.
Yeah.
And so as we were all discussing it, I kind of mentioned, I think it was like after midnight, where something just turned in the house, or it seemed like more sinister, or it had been feeding on our energy all night. And then that's when it was like, okay, I'm ready to play more, you know, play with these girls. And then Nora said there was definitely a shift, even in the air, the way that she felt it. So when we walked in after our second break, it just felt different inside the house. And I think we even, I don't know if we all mentioned it or we were like, I think I called out the time and we mentioned like what might have been happening at that time when we went in.
We did.
We also did that earlier in the evening, I will say. I called out the time and we had kind of a discussion as to what might have been happening when they got home from church. And like Nora went through what happens when they get home late with her kids and just trying to get everyone in bed and all of that. So it was interesting that we kept looking at the time and saying what might have been happening and discussing it during. Chrissy said that it felt sinister when she had gone back in right before we left. And we all sat down and talked about whether it was a spirit or something else, or perhaps something that feeds off of fear.
When we got back to the Airbnbs, when I was talking about the sensation of feeling like the push and the resistance when I was going up the ramp with Inika. And it's at this point that I realized that every time I felt that pressure there, it was always protective. Because at first I was like, I feel like I'm being targeted and picked on.
Yeah.
It's this time that I really start to think about the idea that perhaps this is not a thing that is messing with me, but a thing that is protecting me. Because it continually is moving me from situations where I could have been in some sort of danger. Upstairs, it's like, hey, Lindsay, like it's pushing, like I feel that push. And then I hear, hey, Lindsay, like fucking pay attention. Downstairs, I'm getting pushed away from whatever was on the stairs. And then as I'm walking back up, it's trying to get me to fucking not.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh. And it's the first time that I really think about that. That was really wild for me because it was like, you kept ignoring this. Fuck. You know, because how many more times did it happen that I just didn't notice?
Yeah.
And then everybody else slept, but Amanda and I did not.
No.
We couldn't.
We watched a lot of Schitt's Creek.
We did watch a lot of Schitt's Creek, which was good for the soul. By the time sunrise came around, we were ready to go back.
Yeah.
We'd been kind of like waiting.
I'm like, is it light enough yet? Can I wake everyone up?
I was like Googling sunrise. I'm like sitting outside, looking outside.
It was so cold though. Like every time I walked outside, freezing.
Amanda loved the cold though, I think.
I did.
When we went back in the morning, it didn't feel as heavy. But have you ever been really upset about something and then logically you knew that the upset was gone, but your body hadn't figured it out yet? That sensation, but at the house, is what I felt. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And we had been up a long time at this point too.
We'd been up a long time and I felt like I was hyper aware.
Yes.
Because now I'm like, oh, what am I missing, right? And I am tuned the fuck in.
Yes. I think, you and I had a little bit of a conversation too. Before everyone woke up, we just sat and talked for a bit. Going back, I agree though. Like it felt lighter, but the way I think I described it to you after was like, it didn't feel like it had as much power over us and it was upset.
Yes. And let that be a foreshadowing to our next several necrophonic sessions.
Yes. So while we were there, we're like gathering our things and I had forgotten everything in there. But we're like, you know what? We're here. Let's do a few more. We still have the house for a couple hours.
Yeah. When we came back in, one of the things that we did was we went upstairs because there were the trucks. And I had put a trail cam in the kids' room on the floor facing the trucks and the closet so we could open it. I did it before we went downstairs after it had said, hey, Lindsay, earlier. So before that second break, I had done it. And I very vividly remember doing it because I kept picking it up and moving it and being like, no, if I put it like this, it won't see the closet. So I kept moving it. And so that was the last place that the trail cam was left before we left for the evening. So color me surprised when we come up the next morning and it's now in the parents' room. It is not in the children's room.
And you would think that there'd be photos of when it was moved, but the only photos that are on it are throughout the night of Lindsay moving it around. So yeah, very strange that it's moved. And we were learning how to use this trail cam. I had played with it a little bit before we left, but I had gotten it like the day before I left. And so we definitely programmed the time wrong on it. I uploaded the trail cam photos recently to Lindsay so she could see them too. And at 11:32 p.m., we accidentally mixed up the AM and PM because it's in military time, but it says 11:32 a.m. It means PM. You see Lindsay's foot walking into the kids' room, and I'm guessing it's when she got up to go place the trail cam in there. I think it's your foot at least. And then the next photo is at 6:54 a.m. and it's you walking up the stairs and it's in the parents' bedroom.
I remember the feeling of when I realized it was in the wrong place. I was like, this is not where I left it.
Mm-mm. And I will say the best picture is at 10:52 a.m. I think when you were sitting there and we were still doing the spirit box session and it's church coming out of the kids' room. It might have been when he left the kids' room, by the way, because he's facing it. And that might have been why it went off, is he was probably like, I'm out.
Yeah. Like, oh, let's wrap it up, ladies.
So since it was still early and we had the house for a couple more hours and we were already there, we thought, let's do another necrophonic session in the parents' bedroom now that it's morning, right? See if there's a difference. And we're going to play the audio in a minute, but it's interesting how different it felt between the evening and the daytime.
Mm-hmm.
And in this first clip, Lindsay is the one listening to the necrophonic app. And then in the second clip, it's Inika that's listening to the necrophonic app and then speaking, just so you know the voices. So we're going to play both those clips.
Hit. Who ran us out last night?
Who? A man.
What man?
Could be anyone. Something.
A stranger?
Cold.
Did you know the man?
Must kill. Them? And then other stuff that I can't make it out.
Did we talk to Sarah last night? Too much?
Much. It was lots of voices and I went, just kidding. Which makes me just feel like that same energy that you have.
Yeah.
Like,
What would have happened if we stayed? Girls, to make it look like him.
Is the family here with us? The Moore family?
Beautiful.
Was the man that Lindsay mentioned?
I'll be with you.
No, absolutely not.
You gotta believe.
No.
No.
Let me in.
No, absolutely not.
Aw,
what's your name?
I can hear him.
What's your name?
Anna? Who?
Who's him?
What's your name?
Skin color?
What's your name? What should we call you?
C? No, it said like C?
Oh, like, okay.
2. The blood.
Mm-mm.
The feeling that I had when I heard it say just kidding, I can't even describe it. Like, it felt surreal. Like, I was like, oh, this is not good. Like, we are not safe just because it is day. And one of the things that Enoch said was like, I feel like it's toothless during the day. Like, it's powerless then.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if you give it power, it can have power. And I think that it's so wonderful that we gave such resounding no's.
Yeah. Yeah. We were very grounded and we had talked about it. And especially after our recap the night prior, where we're like, it doesn't get to scare us anymore. And it doesn't get to be in charge. We're in charge of us. And so I think we were a little stronger during the day, all of us.
Yes. Yes. It's after these sessions that I finally am like, hey, Ineka, is this always terrifying? Like, does it always say weird shit? And she's like, no, sometimes it talks about puppies. Like, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. What was strange is, again, how I say that I think it's a trickster of some kind. Because when we're like, who ran us out last night? And then it's like a man. Okay. Could be anyone. And then the must kill part got me a little bit. I was like, oh, okay.
I didn't like that. Like, I was so uncomfortable. And like, hearing it in the headphones is terrifying when it's saying shit like that.
It sounds like it wisps in and out. It's like very weird.
Mm-hmm.
But also, what did the Reverend say?
Slay utterly.
Right? Yes. And must kill, slay utterly. Like, it's very similar in my opinion. And it could be even like the times.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that really at this point, we had gotten to a point where this thing was just having fun. We weren't going to learn anything. It was just having fun with us. And I'm glad that we were all like, you know what? You're fucking done.
Yeah. And then the blood part too. And then we're like, you're not going to get us this time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No more feeding. Buffet's over.
So we're wrapping up our trip and taking photos.
Yes. As we were leaving, we were, packing up our things. And something that Robert had told me is that I should bring certain like quartz with us and different things. So I did. And he asked that each of us take a rose quartz and leave it where we thought the house needed it. Like, let the house tell you where you should leave it. And so I had bought a bunch. So I gave some to Lindsay and Nora before our trip because we were using it at the Elms too. And we each left the quartz somewhere in the home. And as we were leaving, I'm like, I still want to go in the basement. I didn't go in it during the nighttime.
Oh, fuck no.
And part of the reason is when I talked to Robert before our trip, he mentioned to me that whatever is in that house He said there's an entity in the house and it generally hangs out in like the basement area, but there's a part of the kitchen that it likes to go to as well. And he's like, there used to be like an old coal shaft or something like that. I don't know. He's like, it's hard to describe. But he was also there like forever ago, like years and years and years ago.
Yeah.
And he's like, I got the vibe there as well. And so just don't go there if you're not feeling 100% or you're not grounded enough because it will mess with you. And I want you to be safe. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So at night, with those basement doors open, cellar doors, I don't know what you want to call it, it looked threatening. It felt threatening and it felt like we should not be near it. But during the day, I was like, okay, I'm fine. And I am 100%, I'm going down here.
Uh-huh.
And the weird thing is I walked down there and church stopped and watched me. And that's kind of like our picture now when we talk about the trip with the rest of the girls. It's the picture of church just judging me, just going, why are you doing this shit again?
Mm-hmm.
But Lindsay and I did go down there.
One of the things that I thought was interesting that Amanda had mentioned while we were there, because we looked at the basement and we went, fuck no, like in the evening, was that it was so pitch black that like even spooky stuff aside, a person could have been down there and we would not have known.
Yes.
Because it was one of the darkest places I've ever seen. It was like inexplicably dark.
Yeah. And I think we mentioned like, we haven't been watching this the whole time. What if someone walked down there and we didn't know?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's open. Like the doors are just open to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we were down there during the day, like if whatever it was, the something else felt toothless compared to the night before, it didn't feel that way in the basement to me.
Nope. That's its home.
And there's this like cinder block bricked area off that there's like a sliver that you can see in. And I was looking in and I saw like black stuff moving and like with forward momentum towards me. And I was like, Amanda, I see something. And she's like, I'm petting church. And I'm like, Amanda, I see something. You need to move. I almost mowed her the fuck down because I was like, I got to get out of here. But I was not fucking having it. I was like, no.
I think there is something. And I think it likes that basement.
It hangs out there, man. Yeah. Any general thoughts?
Well, knowing everything I know now and coming home and having time to like think about it and truly, Lindsay and I talked about this a few days after, like we actually got home. And I was like, Lindsay, when we left Villisca, were you just like weirdly only thinking about it and dreaming about it? And I think, I mean, for us two, we both agreed that we were. I was like, I can't get it out of my head.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when we got back to our Airbnb in Kansas City, we like got ready for bed because we had slept early. And I was like, I can't sleep. I keep thinking about Villisca. And then when I did fall asleep, I like dreamt of being there again.
I was knocked the fuck out.
I couldn't kick it. But knowing what I know now, I think that there is a very big possibility that there are other spirits there, but they're not vocal. I think that they may be there just to be there, and maybe there's the right person that they'll feel comfortable talking to. But that night, same thing. I do not think that we were talking to any of those. I think we were talking to something that was trying to mess with us and feed off of us and scare us for its enjoyment.
That's fair.
At the time, I didn't know. Like, I didn't have strong feelings one way or another.
Yeah.
I was generally like curious. And I think I mentioned that to you where I'm like, I don't know who could be there. I hope it's not more family. And I very much hope that there's not children stuck there. But I was curious and I wanted to hear the answers and I wanted to hear how it came across. But again, now like looking back at it, I think it was that thing.
Generally, I do not think that any of the entities in the house are the family. And earlier I talked about a gut knowing, and that's what it was. It was that the family wasn't there. Because the things that I felt like, it didn't feel like the sorrow you would have if what had happened there had happened to that thing. I do think that it was a mother and two little girls. And part of the reason for that is that, like, one, just that weird gut knowing, but also there was things happening simultaneously. Like Lexi and I were experiencing similar little kid things at the same time, and the spirit box was going off at the same time. So like there was a lot happening at once. And so for me, I'm like, I don't think it's just one thing.
But I think talking through the spirit box, I think it was
talking through the
Yes.
spirit box.
Okay.
And I think, but not only, because I think whatever thing was in there that was like pro Lindsay also was.
Interesting.
Because when it said, hey, Lindsay, I think it was like, pay fucking attention to like your body. I'm trying to tell you something. Please, like, just fucking do this, you know? But whatever, I said it a few times, but like the something else that was there, it didn't feel like a ghost. It felt heavier and more desperate and sticky.
Yes.
That's such a strange way to describe it, but I've said it before when I've talked about the experience of like feeling a spirit like being near me as like, that feeling when you've eaten too much and you can feel too full, but that in your soul. And with the something else, it was that fullness, but with a pull that wanted to yank it back out and some. And like it didn't all leave when I did. Like it was sticky. Like it wasn't a clean removal. Normally, like I leave where a spirit is and it's not there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like, I feel like there's some fucking residue and like it's lessened over time. But when I talk about it, I feel it more.
It almost feels like when we talked about it, even that night, when we mentioned something, like it would feel more powerful at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And it is strange because I felt like that for a little while after I got home, but it's gone now. I don't feel it anymore.
If I really think about it and concentrate it, like talking about it, like before we got to the section, I like went over and got my incense and I was like, we're just going to do some cleansing on myself, like just to like fix some shit. Cause like, but like I
have this on my desk now.
Yeah. Woof, woof, woof.
I do think that we're still kind of drawn to it though. Like Lindsay and I on various occasions have said we want to go back.
Yeah.
I don't know why we want to go back. Like what else do we need from it? But it's like, I can't wait to go again and just be more prepared and more grounded and more ready for whatever it is. And perhaps if there are other things there that do want out or want help, I guess. I don't know how to say it. I don't know.
Have you ever felt drawn to a place like that before?
No.
Because like I feel drawn to it, but I don't experience it in the same way because it's not the first place that I felt drawn to in that way.
No, I mean, there's been places where I'm like, I want to go back and I really want like my curiosity, but this is like, it's a different drawn.
So we wanted to include, the thoughts and feelings of the other books that we went with, but we also could not edit 2.5 hours of audio for 5 people. Like it would have just been a nightmare. So what we did was we asked everyone who went what experience like stuck with them the most and how it impacted them.
Yes.
So we have clips from everybody, but we're going to read Ineka's at the end. And this is Nora's.
If you hear that sound, that is my bird Thaco. He is very vocal. He doesn't like it that I brought him inside. He was very much enjoying his outside time. And I brought him inside and now he's angry with me. So he's downstairs squawking. Sorry. The biggest moment for me was the crying session. Just because I never expected it. I've never experienced anything like it ever. Not even emotions. I know a couple people say, like they felt emotions or they feel an emotion. I've never experienced that ever. I had zero experience with that. So when it happened to me, it was very eye-opening. I can't even put words to describe how it made me feel other than just extreme sadness. And ever since that experience, I've tried to become more perceptive to things. Like I try to trust my intuition a little bit more, whereas before it may or may not have happened to me in the past, but I feel like I would ignore it or I'd be like, it's someone else. It can't be that. Just because I feel like I used to be very skeptical about things because I had never experienced something like this. And experiencing it is huge. It's like, oh my gosh, there really is something out there, guys.
And this is Chrissy's.
The biggest moment about our stay at Villisca, for me, were the spirit boxes. Specifically, the one we did in the parents' bedroom upstairs. I had never actually used a spirit box myself, and hearing some answers clear as day, and even hearing Lindsay's name come out of it, was completely jarring. I know this is corny to say, but gaining 5 new friends, 6 if you count the cat, which I do, was the most impactful part of the trip for me. It was nice to be able to talk about these things without worrying if I look insane, and to connect with 5 beautiful souls with similar interests. I really can't wait for our next adventures.
And this is Lexi's.
Hey, it's Lexi. I would say the biggest moment, there were probably 2 that most stick out to me. The first one would be when we were upstairs doing the spirit box session in the Moore parents' bedroom. and I felt like that cold wrapping around my fingers, like somebody was trying to hold my hand when we were talking to who we thought were maybe the Stillinger girls. And then seeing my finger move just completely involuntarily, that was a really big, like, and then the EMF, light changed and everything. That was a really big, oh my gosh moment. And that's, I would say, the exciting moment. The scary moment would have been later doing the Estes method with the Necrophonic app when we were doing it downstairs in the living room that night right before we ended up leaving. Just hearing the voices change from simple answers to almost aggressive. And it really felt like it was trying to mess with me when it was trying to do too many voices at one time, and kind of like almost like it was circling around me, like so that my head would want to go in like all different directions. So that was probably the biggest for scariest moment, because that kind of triggered us running from the house. And then the biggest impact, I would say, is I never would have thought of myself as somebody to take things lightly, and I still don't. But previously, having gone to Waverly, I was on a guided tour, but the door slammed shut, but it didn't feel scary. Or being at the boarding house, I heard footsteps, that kind of stuff. But again, it didn't feel scary. So I think it was, I don't know if I want to say a good thing that this one was so scary, but I think it kind of brought it back to this stuff all needs to be taken very seriously. It needs to always be at the forefront of your mind that this isn't just stuff to go do with your friends and kind of like quote unquote mess around with. And I don't believe that that was any of our intention at all. I think that this just kind of like super highlighted that things can go wrong and can get scary really quickly. And it is something that we always need to remember. So after having a few encounters that weren't fully terrifying and then going to this, I think would have been the biggest impact for me, because it was like a good reminder not to get too quote unquote comfortable with anything.
And Enika said that this was her first investigation with a group of people that she didn't already know, so she wasn't sure how it was going to go. But paranormal investigations never go the way one thinks they will. She says it turned out that all our personalities and skills mesh beautifully. And she said, I couldn't have asked for a better group to tackle the Villisca Axe Murder House. I feel like we approached the investigation from a place of kindness and sincerity that's often lacking in bigger investigation groups. It seemed to me like the spirits at the home responded well to that. Too bad we didn't get to spend more time with them before the fear-feeding thing showed up. Was I a little disappointed that we didn't make it far past midnight? Sure, but I won't complain about the nap I was able to get back at the Airbnb. All in all, I'd love to go back sometime and try again. Now that we know about the thing, I think it'll be easier to ignore. And I also can't wait for our next investigation as a group. And we've all talked about like going other places.
Mm-hmm. It was a good group.
Amanda, what was your biggest experience and like how has it impacted you?
So as far as impacting me, like it impacted me for a couple weeks after, I think, where I just like kept dreaming about it and thinking about it and like obsessing over it.
Mm-hmm.
It's luckily like stopped now. I don't know if it's like I got it all out, making this outline with you and revisiting every single video again. But I do really want to go back. I really, really, truly want to go back. I have to go to Kansas City in a couple months. And I'm like, can I work Villisca in there again? But I'm like, I need my group with me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'm more cognizant of my thoughts. And I haven't gone anywhere spooky since yet. But I kind of like you said, like, I need to listen to myself more. Especially even like the barn thing. I wrote it off and there's no reason to write it off, because then Nora had that same feeling later and like it made sense, right?
Yeah.
So I think I need to listen to myself more. I am a little more, I guess, spiritual as I was before it, because getting ready for Villisca was the first time I'm like, okay, I need to learn about crystals and I need to learn about protection and being cognizant and grounded and all of that. And after Villisca, after like putting it to the test where I like half knew how to do it, now I'm researching how to do it better and to be more cognizant of what is happening and how to protect myself and my friends at the time for next time.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I've been doing.
Yeah.
What about you?
I would say like the biggest moment for me was when I got pushed. That was really scary. But it was also the cumulative experience of like having repeated interactions. And while I've always believed in like other things But now it doesn't feel like belief. It feels like knowing.
Yes.
Which is like a different type of peace and like honoring my own beliefs and not second guessing myself. For the first few weeks after we got back, I kept waking up every night. I'd wake up with a jolt, and I would like, even like thinking about it now, like it's hard, but like I would wake up with this dread that I've never felt in my entire life. Like just this feeling that felt so much worse than fear.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel it when we were there. And like, I have been through some shit in my life, and I've never felt fear like this. And I've talked about it before, but like, I'm pretty confident that there's a ghostie in my house.
Yeah, March.
And that it's the woman who lived here before. Her name was March, and she died here. So we think it's her, and we feel like it's a reasonable, like 1 + 1 = 2.
Yeah.
And I just got the sense that I brought something back and it was scaring her. And like, I do not know why. It's just like, it was like that gut knowing. I was like, oh no. Did I bring something like to her home and to scare her? And so the dread that I felt didn't feel like my own. And like, even when I'm talking about it now, like, do you ever have like somebody who you love and care about and you watch them like experience something very scary and it like just, it's breaking to you?
Yeah.
That's kind of like the feeling that I get, you know? But again, whether you want to call it a blanket of dread or a jacket of dread, it didn't feel like mine, but it still felt consuming.
Yeah.
But I looked up like spiritual cleansings and I learned how to do that. And I stopped like waking up with that dread.
Interesting.
Yeah. And like, in terms of impact, that kind of is that same vibe, is that like, I've leaned more into like learning about mystical things and how to protect myself, and also like ways that where I can grow my trust in myself and my confidence in my intuition. Because like, been a lot of things in my life where I probably could have trusted myself more.
Mm-hmm.
And this felt like such like a shaking wake up call of like, you need to fucking trust yourself. And I've also just been like working on ways to connect more with March, but that's like its whole own story. But
I love that.
The trip changed my life in a way that I never would have thought it would have. I thought I was going to just like meet some ghosts, maybe a scary thing. I didn't think it would be like changing to me as a person.
Yeah.
Like who I am.
Agreed. Yeah.
Woof.
Yeah. And I mean, we did have a fantastic group too. Like that.
We really did.
That did help quite a bit, because I can't even imagine going there and all the stuff that happened with any other people. They were great.
And I just think that like each person brought their own superpower with them.
Yeah.
Chrissy sensed the bad faster than any of us. And I feel like Inika knew more about mystical stuff than all of us. And Nora was like this calming presence. And Amanda knew how to work all the things. And I could not stop making dumb jokes at any given moment. Is it the most valuable skill in
I
this?
think so.
No, but necessary.
No, it helped. Like, especially if there was like a moment where we're all like, you know, it felt too heavy or too much. And then you would be able to like help us feel better. It truly did help.
I also do want to learn more about automatic writing.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
Especially if I'm like inclined to do that.
Yeah. So that was our trip to Villisca. And I feel like every time we talk about it, we're like, oh, I should have said this and I should have done this. So we may have extra thoughts that we'll post here and there, because it was just a lot. And like Lindsay said, it was life-changing, this trip. And as we listen and as we go through stuff even more, we may have more to add. But as a reminder, we will have some of the clips after our outro. So hang out for those. We're going to drop the links to everyone's Instagrams who we went with. So you can see some more Villisca content with them too. So make sure to follow them. So we actually shared with our Patreon where we were going before everyone else. So they knew all of our stops and where we were going and what we planned on doing there. We also offered, like, if they wanted to ask anything, they were welcome to, because we would, you know, ask their question for them. What we think that we're going to do next time when we do go somewhere spooky, because we do have lots of plans now, what we want to do, is set up a Patreon night before and really, really like dive into where we're going and talk about it with everyone to get everyone else's opinions as to what we want to do and if there's any content or anything that they want to see while we're there. And with that being said, if there's suggestions, please, by all means, email us. If there's a place that you're like, hey, this place needs to be discussed, like we are for it.
Fuck yeah.
Especially if we can do it overnight. With that being said, though, if you are loving the show and you want to support the show, take a peek at our Patreon page. We have a lot of different tiers, a lot of different fun stuff. While we were there at Malvern, too, we even sent our Patreon something. So we try to do little things here and there for them on top of what they already sign up for. There's also free ways that you can support the show, like leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. We'll also send you a sticker if you do. Posting your favorite episodes on social media, sharing with your friends, engaging in our content on social media to, appease the algorithm. You can also join the Bat Bonfire on Facebook. That's our group for True Creeps. You can also submit your story. If you have any creepy things that have happened to you or anything you want people to know, we have listener episodes that we do each year. And so if you want to submit something, go to truecreeps.com. And we typically do a Podiversary episode in October where we share those. And so with that being said, I mean, October's not terribly far away anymore.
It's not.
Right? Like I'm already seeing Halloween stuff coming out.
Yeah.
If you have a spooky, scary, chilling, weird, anything experience you want to share with us, head there and share it with us because we want to hear it and we want everyone to hear it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is one of my favorite episodes of the year is seeing everybody's experience. And we're going to try to remind everybody sooner because sometimes we're bad about being like, it's in 3 weeks. And this way we can give a little bit more of a heads up.
Yes. Agreed. Well, with that, have a great weekend.
Thanks for creeping with us. Thanks for listening, and as always, a special thank you to our patrons who support us via Patreon.
Please see the link in our show notes to learn more about how you, yes you, can begin to haunt the dump, guard vortexes, or even become a scorching Sasquatch.
Ooh. Also in our show notes, you can find the link to our website, more information on our sources, our social media handles, and our merch store.
We'd love for you to keep creeping with us. So if you like this episode, please subscribe, rate, review, and share the show with your fellow creeps and or ghosts.
I beg of you.
Can you leave if you wanted to? I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. Have you gone next door? Just that one. That was there. Did you guys hear that though?
Just that one.
Okay.
Yeah, hold Miss Lexie's hand.
Right here. I'll go through it. I'll go through it. I heard I'll go through it. Oh, I'm so sorry. Do you like to play piano? That was cool. Yeah. Do you like music? Oh, yeah. Okay. We can play music. I love music. Yeah. I keep feeling like cold around my ears. Like when I'm holding my pen. Do you want her to write something? I'm just kind of like holding that pen through this, but it looks like unintelligible scribbles. But like this side, this is like a straight line, and I was like, not. Okay. Not even my hand. But it looks intelligible. Here are the squiggles if you'd like to see. Are you okay with us investigating the rest of the house? Message before we turn this device off? Yeah. Lindsay, I heard hey Lindsay.
Special flashlight. Outro fodder. You're welcome. To myself who's editing.
And then Eni brought the Necrophonic app on her iPod, I want to say. Or an iPod. Oh my God. iPad.
Messy bun iPod.
Fuck you. I like when you're talking about your headphones too, I cannot for the life of me ever remember what they're called. I don't know why. They're all iPods.
I'm letting her lay down because she's got tip taps. Hi, baby. What if you went and laid on your bed and said, hey, stop snuffling underneath? Don't come in here with your shit, man. I'm lighting incense because I'm getting all types of weirded out.